Do you guys know what isn't cool?
No.
I'm playing a video game right now.
Star Trek isn't cool, and Star Trek is officially dead.
Oh
Apparently,
no!
because
what a shame.
basically, I don't know if anybody cared or noticed, but they released their long-awaited Section 31 movie.
Oh, so bad.
And the reviews have been coming in hot and heavy, and they've
Does
all been
Academy
negative.
know that it's dead?
Even even the shilliest of shills, IGN, gave this thing a 2.
Yeah.
You know it's bad when even IGN can't shill for it.
I didn't know they knew that number.
Yeah, it's very low. But our own Tom Connors here says Section 31 is horrendous. I'm not finishing this shit.
I didn't either. I got about 5-10 minutes. I don't remember where. Whenever they get to the scene in the bar, and she calls out the Section 31 people for being the most obvious fucking people in the room, I'm like, yeah, screw this show. I'm like, this is dumb.
Yeah. And then we have the Trek experts themselves, the Popcast brothers. They said, I watched Section 31. As a generic science fiction movie, it's mediocre at best. As a Star Trek movie, it's just bad. After 30 years as a Trek fan, I've always looked forward to new Star Trek content until Section 31. Normally, when Paramount sends Trek screeners, I'm excited to watch, even if I expect disappointment. But this time, when the wonderful marketing team sent us an early copy of Section 31, I felt something new: apathy. I simply didn't care. Section 31 comes across as generic sci-fi slop, reminding me of a mediocre Firefly with unimportant Star Trek references scattered throughout. Not even the captivating Michelle Yeoh or the hilarious Sam Richardson could manage to keep me entertained. I suggest skipping this one and watching our 2-hour Voyager documentary.
I agree with that handsome guy.
I got to push back a little bit because I've seen a few people say, well, it's okay for generic sci-fi. Is it though? Because your main fucking character kills their own family in the intro scene.
I've seen a lot of sci-fi,
that's something
bro.
that's irredeemable.
Listen, I
Like, there
wrote
used
those
to be
words.
this
There's a lot of sci-fi out there. It's mediocre generic sci-fi. I've seen a lot of bad sci-fi.
Okay. That's not my point, though. You're not listening to what I'm saying. I'm talking about the fundamental unwritten rule when it comes to movie stories. If you have a character that does something so irredeemable, it doesn't matter what they do for the rest of the movie. They're still either going to die or something bad's going to happen to them.
Have you watched
it's just an
The
unsaid rule.
Expanse, Under the Dome?
I'm sorry, I can't get behind
Claire
a character
and
who
I,
kills their own
hijinks.
family. There's no way I can ever forgive that
I know,
and actually
but-
root for that character.
I know.
Well,
There's
I
a lot
don't
of-
give a
there's a lot
shit
of
what
characters in
show it
sci-fi.
is.
Okay. Don't make me cut anyone's mic. But
Damn.
I'm gonna throw this to Brian, because Brian, you tried to tempt me with an early screening of Section 31.
Shut
And
up!
I
You
was-
can't say that to people.
I was so apathetic that I was like, well, you invited me to your house to come watch it with you, and I was like,
Right.
yeah, I know. I just don't care. I just
Didn't have good
don't
enough
care.
snacks, Brian. Didn't have good enough snacks.
That was a good choice, good sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Craig, you're muted, bud.
And I got the early screening like a month and a half ago, right? It was a while ago.
But it was funny because, like, when I was talking to you about it, I was like, how is it? And you were like, I'm liking it. But did you change your mind?
I told you I was liking it. I was about 10 minutes into it when they introduced the team, and I'm like, I can see how this might be fun. I'm watching it in pieces. About halfway through, I'm realizing that this is really, really bad Star Trek. So from a generic science fiction point of view, it's okay. It's okay. Like, there's parts of it that are sort of interesting and world building. But as a Star Trek movie, it's really, really bad because it strips everything that makes Star Trek out of the genre. Like, this is not a Star Trek film. This is generic sci-fi slop with Star Trek references. And that's what makes it so bad, because everything that makes Star Trek has been removed from the movie. It is the opposite. It's literally the opposite of Star Trek. It's the antithesis of Star Trek. It doesn't work. But yeah, for about 10 minutes in the movie, I'm like, I can enjoy this. I might be able to enjoy this. And then it just got worse and worse and worse. Granted, I think Richardson is really funny. I've been a fan of him for a long time. But all of his comedy and like his normal quips slowly started to leave. So it started off sort of heavy whenever they went to him, and he just became more and more cucked throughout the movie and was no longer interesting. And while I like Michelle Yeoh, I gotta say, like, you give her like a ton of dialogue heavy stuff, and it gets tiresome. And it's because, you know, she doesn't speak great English. She's a great actress, but she doesn't speak great English. And they had her trying to do really intricate, like, dialogue scenes that just didn't work. Especially, like, I mean, I'm turning on subtitles trying to understand what was going on, and it's the sound mix was bad. This movie got worse and worse the longer it went. And I agree with Tom. The whole, like, the hero of the movie killing her family and all that, 100%. That's crazy. It's bad storytelling. But that's not what made the movie bad. What made the movie bad was everything else. Like the actual scenes they're shooting on. They're obviously shooting on like those 3D wall sound sets or something. Everything looks really bland, but they put a lot of coloring into it, almost like a cyberpunk type of coloring, to try to make it look futuristic and hip. And it just didn't work. It just didn't work. So, like, take away the Star Trek part and just go, oh, this science fiction movie. It's just sort of bland and mediocre. Add Star Trek to it, and it's a horrible movie. That's me.
Well, Alex, you know, for a while there, we were watching the original series. We were going episode by episode, doing a
How fun was
breakdown.
that?
That was a lot of fun. And like when you compare the original series, which is a classic, to the kind of drivel that Paramount's putting out with Star Trek nowadays, is it any wonder that nobody cares anymore?
No, they're taking themselves way too freaking seriously. Like these new dark and brooding and action-filled Star Trek shows and stuff like that are meant to be like, oh, let's modernize Star Trek. That's not what made Star Trek good. It wasn't the freaking phaser graphics and, you know, the ship battles. It was the writing and the intrigue and the relationships between the characters. I have not seen or heard about anything that I care about with as far as Star Trek goes since season 3 of Picard, which, by the way, another reason why I'm kind of like, I'm not going to check into Star Trek ever again, because season 3 of Picard was so universally enjoyed by both the harshest of critics and the happiest of people that love everything with the label Star Trek on it. It was just so good. The fact that whoever's in charge at Paramount or whoever's in charge over there at the Star Trek IP office going, well, you know what? Here's the most popular thing we've produced in the last 10 years. That's great. I'm not going to greenlight anything after that. Terry Metalis doesn't get jack shit. There's no sequel ready. I'm like, we're not going to do a TV show. We're not going to do anything. We're just going to leave it. And we're going to go with this Section 13 bullshit. Like, idiotic maneuver to allow this franchise to die this way. And I just don't care. I'm completely apathetic to it. I'll watch the Next Generation with my kids. I'll watch the original trilogy for some the original series for some laughs, but that's it. Like, Star Trek is essentially cooked. It's completely cooked.
Yeah, it's cooked.
Yeah, you know, Craig, one of the interesting things about this is that in the video game industry, they haven't been listening to their audience, and they've been making stuff that the audience has been rejecting and ignoring. Star Trek's been doing this since, I'd argue, J.J. Abrams was in charge, right? Where, like, the audience keeps telling them what they want, and they keep refusing to give it to them. What do you think could save Star Trek at this point?
Well, like, I'm not a Star Trek fan, but this is a trend that we see across all forms of entertainment, to where you have these people who are in their echo chambers. They don't realize that there's an entire audience out there telling them what they want, and they refuse to listen. Right? This is like I said, a common reoccurrence that if they got off Blue Sky, if they got they got off X, and actually sat down and talked with some real people, not like a focus group in Hollywood, but actually went out and did some private. I think it'd be really interesting to see if they actually sat down and talked, maybe went to some conventions. Hey, what do you guys want to see? These are your hardcore fans, right? So you want to go ask them. And I mean, that's actually a really interesting idea, holding like a focus group at a convention, at a fan convention. That'd be pretty huge. But it seems like such a simple solution. And that's the thing I don't understand, is you just listen to your audience. Listen to what the audience tells you. You don't need to inject anything silly into what's going on. And there's also another issue, right? And that is, a lot of these franchises that we see this in video games, where the people who made the original franchise, the original entry in the franchise, they're no longer a part of it anymore, right? So the studio that you once loved, the people that made that studio, the studio that you loved, are no longer there. So you love it in name only. And that's what I think we're seeing with some of these pop culture franchises, with Star Wars, right? Star Trek. You can go down the list for a lot of these pop culture entities, and you'll see the same thing where people are like, man, I really love X. But what they're actually saying is, I loved X when I was 20 years ago, or whatever it may be, right? Whenever I was first exposed to it. So it's a reoccurring thing.
100%.
Well, Tom, what's it going to take for Paramount to fire Alex Kurtzman? Like, how bad does he has to mess up in order to get replaced at this point?
First of all, they got to sell the company. Like, right now they're in such turmoil because of the whole Skydance deal. And then you got another offer they just had come in this week. So they're dealing with all that. And from what we've heard, that Bad Robot is all wrapped up into, or not Bad Robot, Secret Hideout, sorry, is all wrapped up into Star Trek anyway. So they got to wait him out. And that's where I guess this rumor about taking a break for 5 years is coming from.
What's that rumor? I haven't heard that one.
Well, there's just a rumor going around that Trek needs a 5-year break, and there's people that are expressing that behind the scenes that's what they need to do after this Academy thing, because if you notice, there's nothing in production after Academy.
Yeah, they're right. Yeah, he's right. There's nothing in production. Yeah, but they needed that 5-year break like 2 years ago.
But I think it has more to do with them waiting out Kurtzman's contract than it has to do with anything else.
Imagine
'Cause I
just
think they
taking a break
realize
from
how-
Star Trek
yeah.
to wait out the contract. That'd be wild, right?
I think that's what it's about, because I think they have no other option other than buying him out right now. And I know that was always part of the talk, but now there's in this new offer they have is bigger than what Skydance was offering. And rumor is that Elon Musk might be one of the investors.
Oh, of course.
Hey, it is a legit question. How many things does Elon?
If it isn't Elon, it's Bezos. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, steady.
Sure. How many things does Elon have to own until people are like,
I'm at the point. I'm at the point now. Right now is the point.
or if he's like, guess what? I own Star Trek, right? Or it's like, oh, okay,
It would still be in better hands. It has been so mismanaged for the last decade. It's insane. More than that.
Odin, would you say that Star Trek has been more mismanaged than Star Wars at this point?
It's hard to say just because
That's tough.
I'm not
For
as much
longer.
into Trek as I am into Star Wars. Like, I've seen, as far as like actual like visual content, pretty much everything from Star Wars. Where for Star Trek, I always mention this, my knowledge is all of DS9, which was my first actual like fully watching from first to end, and really enjoyed that show quite a bit. I've of course started watching the original series, still about where I was, back towards the end of the summertime, because I just haven't had any time during the school year to really watch too many more episodes. But a good halfway through the first season, and have also been enjoying it quite a bit. And when I was growing up, right, Next Generation was on every now and then, especially whenever we would travel. We'd go on camping trips, and we'd drive halfway across the country. It's like Colorado, and so we'd stay in these hotels where at that time you only had maybe 3 or 4 free channels, and on syndication was Star Trek Next Generation. So I'm coming in from that angle, and so in my opinion, it's Star Wars that's been more mismanaged, because that's the one that I have the most experience with. But there's definitely an argument to be made, I think, for both sides, because Star Trek really has gone downhill so much. I did not mind the J.J. Abrams film from back in 2009, but again, that's my background there. Just again, I think probably makes more sense to why I didn't have as many issues. And then as I've learned more about it, I've realized why so many fans had issues with, especially Into Darkness and after that as well. And everything I've been hearing about the newer Trek has just been awful. And my first really like watching anything in its entirety from New Trek was Section 31. And even then only got halfway through the movie before I was like, okay, not only am I just not having time to finish this, but I really just don't want to finish this, because it's bad. It's just in every level, whether you go generic sci-fi or Star Trek, it is bad. Like, the vibes in the very beginning were Rebel Moon vibes. Like, that's how bad it was. And, going to Tom's point, yeah, when you start off with a character where they kill their family, and then the whole point is trying to like redeem their character, it's like, no, I'm sorry. Like, that's just not That's just not the way you start off a story, and how you actually carry it out. Not to mention, I like Michelle Yeoh. I thought that she was probably the best part of the actual movie. But when the younger actress playing Michelle Yeoh's character has better English than Michelle Yeoh does, that's a big problem. And that creates a
100%.
bit of consistency issues too. Because you're like,
Oh
wait a
my
minute,
God.
how does your English get worse as you've gotten older? That doesn't make any sense at all.
That's so weird. I had the same thought.
And I'm
dude.
like, Michelle Yeoh, you're great, but like that, they did not do well with you, like with casting your younger half, right? It just didn't really work in that capacity. And because my knowledge though is DS9, and I had to kind of remind myself of a few things. I had forgotten that Section 31 was introduced in many ways in DS9, and with the torture of Bashir's character, and a lot of the other elements there. I think Gul Dukat had interactions with Section 31 as well. And it's like, that's like William Sadler was like who I knew Section 31 to be. And he's like wearing like that black leather, just very secretive, clearly like, very deep ops. And what we got was an attempt at Suicide Squad in Star Trek is what it felt like. And it was
Sounds
bad.
so gross.
It was so bad.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, that's the
you know,
problem with Section 31 is it's the worst kept secret in Star Trek. Everybody knows about it.
yeah,
And
and
why do you have black badges, dude? Just have regular badges.
you guys keep bringing up Michelle Yeoh's character killing her family at the start of the movie. Do you guys remember how like she used to eat kelpians?
Yeah, that's the other thing too, is if you haven't seen the show, how do you know what you're watching? That's the other question I have. How could anybody not be completely lost? Sure, you get that little intro bit that feels like you're about to play a video game, but like, honestly, I don't know how you would
As
know
the
any of
glitching?
what's going on if you haven't watched Discovery.
Yeah, I mean, she's eating eyeballs. I think they tried to like show how much of a monster she is/was.
And I don't understand the timeline of this too, because somebody was explaining to me, because I think it was Gary of Nerdrotic had said that the star date doesn't make any sense, because if you guys remember, Discovery takes place during the TOS era, right? Then they went into the fucking future. And then I don't remember what happened. Did they wind up someplace back in time somehow? Because now she's in the TNG era somehow?
So no, so I'll tell
Yeah.
you. Discovery takes place between Enterprise and TOS,
Yeah.
right? And they go to the future.
Yeah, they go
And-
way into the future, like
Like
fucking
900 years
uber
in the future.
Yeah.
Well, because she went so far in the future and she's not from our universe. This is so fucking stupid, by the way.
I remember this. Yeah, they had to like make her like part
they
of
had
the...
to they had to send her either back in time or back to her own universe, because it was like ripping her apart, because you
That's
can't
right.
go
Yes. Okay.
so
So she
far
wound
into
up.
the future and away, because like
So she wound up in the TNG era, basically.
You're right. So because the timelines like disengaged, she was being pulled apart. So they basically sent her back into time into the TNG area. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
trying to
true.
remember. I knew it.
Stupid.
sounded
It's
like
stupid.
that.
So stupid. So stupid. I'm not defending it. I'm just saying that's what they said.
Yeah, they basically had to like sew her to this timeline, is what it was.
Right.
It was so stupid.
It's so stupid. Discovery was, look, if you want to say what was worse, Section 31 of Discovery, Discovery is still worse. Discovery is the worst Star Trek to ever exist. And I think Discovery is one of the worst science fiction shows to ever exist. And yes, I'm including Under the Dome season 3. Okay, I'm
Well,
telling you
just-
right now, Discovery is by far the what started Star Trek's descent into madness.
Well, before we even knew that she straight up killed her family, right? We already knew she was Space Hitler in this other galaxy, which
Right.
never made sense to me to begin with, is why in the world they ever thought she could be a redeemable character. Because let's think about, because she's from the mirror universe, the same mirror universe where like everybody has mustaches, remember?
Right, goatees.
So-
right. Goatees.
So
right.
like, yeah, so see, she's from this area where, and she's supposed to be one of the worst there.
She's the worst there. In the
So you
worst
bring her
universe,
here-
she's the worst person. Right.
She's got to be like Bin Laden meets Hitler times 20 here. Like, that's my point. Like, yet they use her for Section 31 and they just pal around with her and shit. It's like,
So
This-
many bad ideas in Discovery, and the fact that the projects that they're continuing with are based on Discovery, when Discovery is the worst of all Star Trek, makes no sense. Section 31 made no sense to keep that character going, no matter how great Michelle Yeoh is. Let's be real. So
Mhm.
Michelle Yeoh is a great actress. Well, they signed that deal after the Everywhere All at Once. They're like, oh, we got to get more Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah.
See, I heard
She
it was
was
actually
already tied to such a
before
shitty,
that.
irredeemable character. So it was
See, I heard it was before that. See, here's the deal
I
I
don't know.
heard. I don't know if you heard differently, but this is what I heard, because this Section 31 show was talked about way back when Discovery was first on. And this is something this has been Kurtzman's little baby for years.
End
that
of,
he's
end
trying
of
to get off the
season
ground.
2 with the control.
Now, what happened is Michelle Yeoh started getting busy. So they had to keep pushing it back. And then she had a window. And they told them that if you're going to do this, it's now or never, because she is busy. And that was even before she won the Oscar, from what I remember hearing. And then after she won the Oscar, they were telling Star Trek it was basically impossible for her to sign on to a show. And they gave her $12 million to buy her out of that contract and did this movie, which is basically a backdoor pilot that they were hoping would be popular enough that they could work it out into a show.
That ship has sailed. But
Exactly.
now we have Star Trek Academy, which is based in the future on Discovery still. Like, I don't imagine being the studio right now, seeing Section 31 completely fail miserably and go, oh my God, Academy is still coming out. We still have reshoots. We still have marketing. We still have to spend money. And out of between Section 31 and Academy, even the haters like me were like, I would rather watch a Section 31 over Star Fleet Academy. Oh my God. I'm going to watch Discovery, but it's even more emotional, has even more insane pronouns. It's like, let's take the worst part of the worst Star Trek show and amplify that to 10 and make it about teenagers in the future. Oh God, it sounds so bad.
You know what's not bad, guys, are super chats. We got one from Darth Maul's lower half.
Look at that transition. Sorry.
So the segues.
Great stuff. Way to go. Love that.
My God.
I keep hearing that we have won the woke war, but what have we won other than a pile of ash? There's nothing left. What is there to look forward to? Well, in terms of Star Trek, that's true. I think, every time, like, we can kind of gauge, interest level of fan communities based off like the videos we release. And I know that Brian and Shane have been struggling because like they did a lot of Star Trek content. And whenever we release videos about Star Trek, they get like 0 views because like nobody ever cares. Nobody cares about that franchise anymore. And it's sad.
Yeah, we were the Star Trek channel for a little bit. And now I'm like, oh, can't do that no more.
And like Star Trek, when I worked at Paramount,
25% different. We fucking coined that term.
That's true. You did.
Yeah. When I worked at Paramount, Star Trek was known as the golden goose. It was the thing that kept that studio afloat in hard times because the fan base was always there. They would always show up for it. You could make Star Trek really cheap and it would always make its money back and then some. But in this new day and age, they've completely run that franchise into the ground. And even the hardest core fans, like they don't care anymore. They'll watch the original series on their Blu-ray DVDs and that's about it. They're not showing up for any of the new stuff. They're not buying any of the merch. They're not doing anything. All the licensees, which is where the real money from Star Trek is, are having trouble moving any of their
they've had to admit
stuff.
They're pissed because they're forced to take Discovery licenses with the other licenses. Did you hear about that?
Oh, I read that. I read that too.
Yeah. You want to fill us in, Tom?
Yeah, basically what's pissing off all these licensees is whenever they want to get something Star Trek to do, like, a Picard figure or something from TOS, Kurtzman and crew will say, yeah, you can do that, but you got to take something from Discovery as well. So that's why, like, with the Funko Pops, you got one of Saru and Michelle or Mikey Spock. And same thing with the figures. You got a Mikey Spock and a Saru character and stuff like that. Because they're basically forced to have to do those if they want to do the other ones. And even, who was it? McFarlane, I think, even admitted to that too. Because a bunch of their Trek stuff was going on discount shelves because they couldn't sell it. Because this stuff is just, nobody wants it anymore.
Who wants a lifelike figure of Michelle Burnham? I'm sorry, Michael.
Nobody.
Burnham. No one.
Only Michael Burnham wants a Michael Burnham.
I don't even know if Michael Burnham wants it. She's like, maybe season 4, but definitely not season 1. What was going on with the hair?
Yeah, her hair was crazy all throughout that series.